You guys will never believe what happened. I'm Chloe, living in this vibrant, artsy neighborhood in a riverfront city, chasing my dream of becoming a sculptor who carves stories out of stone. I was set for a quiet night, alone, just me and my sketch pad, when an unexpected knock at the door changed everything. There's this guy, Marcus, the retired jazz musician down the hall with this soulful, magnetic vibe, think silver hair, warm eyes that hold a lifetime of melodies, and a voice that could make a saxophone weep. He's always been a distant neighbor, just a nod in the hallway. But tonight, he stepped into my world, and my dangerous desires let him in. Want to know how it played out? Keep watching, because this story is all about one night that burns brighter than the city lights across the river. Like and subscribe for more. Chloe had planned a quiet night in her apartment, a sanctuary in the heart of Riverbend's artsy neighborhood, where the city's pulse thrummed just beyond her windows. Her space was a chaotic haven of chisels, clay molds, and half-finished stone sculptures. The air thick with the scent of plastered dust and coffee. The river's shimmer casting silver patterns across her hardwood floors. Her latest project, a marble figure of a dancer mid-whirl, mirrored her restless energy, its curves bold and unapologetic, much like the dangerous desires simmering beneath her calm exterior. She wasn't looking for company, content to lose herself in her art. But lately, her thoughts kept drifting to Marcus, the retired jazz musician down the hall, whose quiet presence had become a melody she couldn't shake. At 62, Marcus was a former saxophonist whose soulful charm had caught her eye since she moved into the building 6 months ago. His silver hair was slightly tousled. His warm brown eyes carried the depth of years playing smoky clubs, and his hands, calloused from decades of coaxing notes from his saxophone, moved with a quiet, effortless grace. His evening Chloe in the hallway, paired with a fleeting smile, had always felt polite, but distant, like a note played just out of reach. She'd told herself it was just appreciation for a neighbor who'd once helped her carry a heavy slab of marble up the stairs, who'd shared a story about a legendary jazz club during a brief elevator chat. But her dangerous desires, always lurking, stirred a curiosity she couldn't ignore. And tonight, an unexpected knock at her door brought those desires to life. The evening was alive with the city's hum, the riverfront neighborhood buzzing with distant laughter and the clink of wine glasses from nearby cafes. The air heavy with the scent of rain-soaked pavement and blooming jasmine from a neighbor's balcony. Chloe had been sketching her dancer's pose, her fingers smudged with charcoal, when the knock came sharp, unexpected, pulling her from her work. She opened the door to find Marcus, his flannel shirt unbuttoned at the collar, a bottle of wine in one hand, his smile hesitant but warm, his brown eyes catching hers in the soft glow of her hallway light. "Hope I'm not interrupting," he said, his voice a low, smooth hum, like a jazz riff played soft. "I found this wine in my kitchen. Thought you might like it. I thank you for that sketch you gave me last month." Chloe's heart skipped, her mind flashing to the moment she'd handed him a quick charcoal drawing of a saxophone, a spurred moment gift after he'd helped with the marble. "You didn't have to," she said, her voice light but charged, stepping aside to let him in, her dangerous desires nudging her forward. "But I'm not saying no to wine. Come in, let's open it." She gestured to her cluttered living room, her hazel eyes glinting with invitation, her curiosity outweighing her plan for solitude. He hesitated, his gaze flickering over her face, then nodded, stepping inside with a cautious smile. "Only if you tell me about that sculpture you're working on," he said, his voice warm but tinged with something careful, like a musician testing a new melody. The apartment was a warm chaos, canvases leaning against walls, a work table strewn with tools, and a worn velvet couch by a wide window overlooking the river, its surface shimmering under the city lights. A record player spun a soft jazz tune, Miles Davis. Slow and sultry, its notes weaving through the air like a quiet pulse, mingling with the scent of plaster, wine, and a trace of Marcus's cologne, something earthy, like patchouli. They settled on the couch, the wine bottle and 2 glasses on a low table between them, Chloe's sketchpad resting nearby like a silent witness. The jazz record crackled softly, its melody wrapping the room in a warm glow, the river's reflection casting silver ripples across the walls. Their conversation started easy, her sculptures progressed, his stories of playing in New Orleans clubs. But Chloe's mind drifted to flashes of their past encounters, Marcus's hand steadying hers as they maneuvered the marble slab up the stairs, his laugh when she'd tripped over a paint can in the hallway, the way he'd lingered to admire her sketch, his voice soft as he'd said, "You've got a real gift, Chloe." Each memory carried a spark she'd tried to dismiss, chalking his distance up to neighborly politeness. But now, sitting close, the air felt charged, like a note held just before release. The talk turned personal, the jazz notes fading to a soft hum as they poured the wine, its ruby glow catching the light. Chloe shared her passion for sculpting, how it felt like carving her own heart into stone. "It's like I'm chasing something I can't name," she said, her voice soft but steady, her fingers tracing the rim of her glass, the wine's warmth lingering on her lips. "I want my art to say something, to make people feel." Does that sound crazy? Her eyes met his, searching for a hint of the man behind the polite nods, her dangerous desires stirring under his steady gaze. Marcus nodded, his hands resting on his knees, close enough that she could feel their warmth, a quiet strength. "Not crazy," he said, his voice low, resonant, like a saxophone's mournful note. "Your work's got that fire, Chloe. I saw it in that sketch you gave me our oys. It's hard to look away from." His words were careful, but a new weight lingered in them, a hesitation that made her pulse quicken, her curiosity flaring. She leaned forward, the couch creaking softly, the scent of wine mingling with the room's warmth. "Hard to look away?" she teased, her voice playful but edged with daring, her hazel eyes locking on his. "That's a big compliment from the guy who barely says hi in the hallway. You sure you're not just being neighborly?" Her dangerous desires pushed her to test the boundaries, the apartment shrinking to just the 2 of them, the jazz melody, a soft heartbeat in the background. He chuckled, setting his glass on the table, his eyes holding hers a moment longer than usual, a flicker of something unguarded in his gaze. "I'm not that neighborly," he said, his voice warm but tinged with a quiet intensity, like a musician playing a solo for one. "You're not just the artist down the hall, Chloe. You've got something real." The jazz record swelled softly, the air heavy with the scent of plaster and the weight of their moment, the river outside shimmering like a staged backdrop. Chloe's mind raced, replaying more moments. The first time Marcus had stopped by to compliment her hallway sculpture, his nod curt but his eyes lingering. A late-night elevator ride when he'd shared a story about a jazz club in Harlem, his voice weaving magic as she listened. The quiet moment when he'd helped her carry that marble slab, his hand brushing hers, his voice soft. "This is you, Chloe. All of you." Each memory tightened the thread between them, pulling her closer to the edge of something bold and new, her heart pounding with the possibility that his distance wasn't indifference. "Hey guys," Chloe said, her voice bright but laced with mischief, as if speaking to her imaginary audience, her eyes glinting as she leaned back, breaking the tension for a moment. "We're about to get into this spicy portion of the story, so please don't forget to like and subscribe." She grinned, the words a playful nod to her daring, but her heart pounded as she turned back to Marcus, the air buzzing with anticipation, the jazz notes swelling like a cue for the next act. Marcus shifted, his body angling toward her, his elbow brushing hers on the couch, the contact sending a spark through her like a chisel striking stone. He set his glass down, his movements deliberate, his brown eyes searching hers with a new intensity, like he was playing a melody he'd long held back. "Chloe," he said, his voice low, calm, but strained, each word chosen with care. "I've been distant with you, and it's not because I don't see you. It's because I see you too clearly. You walk in here with that fire in your art, in your eyes, and it's hard to keep my distance. Harder every day." The confession hit like a spotlight, sharp and illuminating, dissolving the polite wall between them. Her heartbeat quickened, her breath catching as she held his gaze, the river's silver light casting shadows across his face. She could laugh it off, keep things light, but her dangerous desires were bold, hungry for the truth he'd laid bare. "Too clearly," she whispered, her voice unsteady but daring, leaning closer, her shoulder brushing his, the tension thick enough to touch. "So all this time, you've been keeping me at arm's length because you see me?" Her eyes locked on his, flickering to his lips before returning, her courage pushing her forward. He didn't move, his eyes steady, warm but piercing, like he was reading a score he'd avoided for too long. "Exactly," he said, his voice soft but firm, like a note played with precision. "You're not just my neighbor, Chloe. Your art, your energy, the way you challenge everything, it's magnetic. I've been trying to keep things simple, keep that line clear, but you walk in here bold and alive, and it's like trying to ignore a song that won't stop playing." Her mouth went dry, the jazz music fading to a distant hum, the apartment narrowing to just them, the couch, the table, the shimmering river outside. Her mind flashed to every encounter, his guarded nods in the hallway, the way he'd linger after helping her with the marble, his voice soft when he'd said her name. She'd thought he was just being polite, but now his words painted a vivid picture, one she hadn't dared imagine. Her friend Nora's warning echoed faintly. "He's so reserved, Chloe. Don't read into him," but Nora was wrong. This wasn't her imagination. This was real, raw, and electric. "So that's why you're always so distant?" she asked, her voice teasing but pointed, her hand brushing his on the couch, the touch electric, sending a shiver through her like a spark in a quiet studio. "Because I'm magnetic?" Her eyes glinted, her dangerous desires holding her steady. The air thick with possibility, the jazz melody, a soft pulse in the background. Marcus laughed, a low, warm sound, his fingers curling slightly around hers. Not pulling away, the contact warm and steady like a saxophone's hum. "You're impossible," he said, his voice rich with a mix of amusement and strain, his eyes twinkling with a warmth she hadn't seen before. "You walk in here with that spark in your eyes, and I'm supposed to stay distant? You're rewriting every note I've got, Chloe." She grinned, her heart soaring, the tension a living thing between them pulsing like a heartbeat. "Maybe I like rewriting notes," she said, her voice soft but honest, her eyes locked on his, the jazz notes swelling like applause. "Maybe I don't want you to stay distant anymore." His chuckle was warm, his thumb tracing a slow line across her hand, the touch sparking a fire in her chest that felt like a sculpture taking shape. "Your trouble," he said, his eyes twinkling with a mix of caution and something deeper, something that made the apartment feel like a stage set for two. "But I've always been drawn to trouble. And you, Chloe, you're the kind I can't walk away from." The words landed like a perfect chord, her heart racing, the tension between them alive and electric. They didn't move, the couch holding them close, the river outside shimmering like a backdrop. The conversation stretched on, hours melting away as the jazz record looped, its notes a soft heartbeat to their words. Chloe shared more than she'd planned, her fears of her sculptures being overlooked, her passion for capturing life in stone, her dreams of exhibiting her work in galleries. Marcus listened, his eyes never leaving hers, his presence grounding her like a well-played melody. He shared to his regrets from the jazz circuit, the songs he never wrote, the way her boldness had cracked his careful routine, like an artist rewriting the score. Flashbacks filled the silences, painting their connection in vivid hues. She remembered their first meeting, when Marcus had nodded at her sculpture in the hallway, his comment brief but kind. A late-night elevator ride when he'd shared a story about a jazz club in Chicago, his voice weaving magic as she listened. The quiet moment when he'd admired her sketch, his hand brushing hers as he'd said, "All of you." Each memory was a brushstroke, building the canvas of their moment, the apartment their stage, the river's light their spotlight. The night grew late, the air heavier, the tension a constant hum, like a string vibrating on a saxophone. Chloe's dangerous desires pushed her to keep going, to lean into the spark. But Marcus's confession lingered, a truth she couldn't ignore. "You didn't answer my question," she said, her voice teasing but pointed, her hand still close to his, the warmth of his touch lingering. "What do you want, Marcus? Now that you've told me the truth." He leaned back, his smile slow, his eyes tracing her face like he was memorizing a melody. "I want to see where this goes," he said, his voice soft but deliberate, like a musician playing a solo for one. "You're bold, Chloe, bolder than I was ready for. You walk in here with that fire in your art, and you're turning my world upside down. I'm not sure I want to stop you." Her breath caught, the apartment shrinking further, the river's light framing them like a final act. Nora's warning echoed again, but it felt distant, drowned out by the pulse of her heart, the thrill of her dangerous desires. Marcus's hand stayed near hers, the space between them charged with unspoken promise. "You're making it really hard to keep this." "Neighborly," she said, her voice a mix of teasing and truth, her hazel eyes locked on his, her courage holding her steady. He laughed, his hand shifting closer, his fingers brushing hers again, the touch warm and electric, like a note held in a quiet club. "Neighborly's overrated," he said, his voice low, rich, carrying the weight of their shared moment. "What do you want, Chloe? Now that you know the truth?" Her heart pounded, the memory of his confession echoing, the spark of his touch still warm on her skin. What did she want? Safety, solitude, the quiet night she'd planned? Or this hymn, the thrill, the fire he ignited in her heart? "I want to keep this," she said, her voice steady now, her eyes locked on his, her hand pressing lightly against his, the contact grounding her like a sculpture's weight in her hands. "This feeling, this moment, you..." His smile widened, his eyes twinkling with warmth and intensity, like a musician seeing a song come to life. "That's a bold choice," he said, his voice soft but charged. The jazz record's final notes fading into silence, leaving only the hum of the city outside. "But I've always been a fan of bold." The apartment was still, the river outside a silver mirror, reflecting their moment back to them. Marcus's hand lingered near hers, the air alive with possibility. The sketch pad on the table, forgotten like a prop left backstage. "Good night, Chloe," he said, his voice soft but heavy, his eyes holding hers as he stood, offering her a way out but leaving the door wide open. "Good night, Marcus," she said, her voice a mix of teasing and truth, her heart pounding as she stood grabbing her sketch pad, the spark between them brighter than the city lights across the river. She stepped toward the door, her dangerous desires racing, the memory of his truth, his touch, lingering like a sculpture she couldn't finish. She closed her apartment door behind her, the night air cool, the neighborhood's rhythm soothing, the river's hum a quiet applause. As she leaned against the door, her heart ablaze with the thrill of what might come next, she knew her dangerous desires had let him in, leaving only a bold, new chapter, one fearless move at a time.